Hey, everybody, welcome back to Contractor Radio. I am your host, Jim Johnson, the head coach at Contractor Coach Pro, where we help contractors get control of their business so they can grow their business and achieve that personal and financial freedom they were chasing when they started their business. And today, I'm talking with somebody about something that I'm super passionate about, which is branding and what that might mean to you, how important it can be, what it actually does for your business, and truly understanding it from a strategic standpoint. And I'm excited to have a conversation with our guest today because I got to see some of his work and it is off the charts. And so we're going to get to learn a lot today, I hope, to help you guys with your own branding and maybe get some of the ideas down from a strategic standpoint to get better at that, to create something that people want to be a part of. But before we do that, we're going to take just a second here to hear a little bit from one of our sponsors. We got to keep the lights on and pay the bills and all that good fun stuff. So a little bit from Signpost.
Want more 5-star reviews from your customers? At Signpost, we make it easy for your customers to give you great reviews on Google, Facebook, Yelp, and more. Our software connects with industry-specific solutions, driving even more reviews from your customers. Drive loyalty and repeat business by sending the right messages at the right times to your prospects and customers. Message your contacts from anywhere, anytime, using text, photos, and video all in one app. Check on progress with campaigns and review generation across Google, Facebook, and Yelp. Visit signpost.com and get your demo today.
Just want to say thanks to the folks over at Signpost for being a sponsor, supporter of the show, and great friends. If you're looking for a better way to engage your clients and stay in contact with them throughout the process and create a customer experience unlike any other, go check out Signpost today. And part of that whole experience is a bit of our branding and all these things in marketing that got to get tied together. Like marketing can be a bit confusing with everything that goes on. We got our digital marketing, we've got our print marketing, we've got all of the stuff that we do from a outreach perspective, an incoming perspective, client experience, raving fans. You hear all the different things that are going on out there. And we're going to try and wrap our head around a little bit of that today with the owner of Prolific Brand Design, Ryan Kettering. Ryan Kettering, welcome aboard today. Good to have you.
Hey, Jim. Thanks, man. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. And funny story, most of the people I interview, I kind of know, at least I've met a couple of times, and you're different. I haven't met you before. But I've gotten into this habit of asking my previous podcast hosts, like, hey, if I was going to interview one person that they're like, hey, put this person on, and he would be valuable to our community, they give me somebody. And I interviewed Jim Allen from Roofer Marketers, and I asked him that question. He's like, dude, absolutely, Ryan Kettering, got to have that guy. So glad to have you today. You and I went back and forth on Facebook messaging quite a bit. And so tell everybody kind of just how you got here. You've got this Prolific Brand Design business, but how did you get into it, and what made this the thing that you're passionate about?
Yeah. When I was younger, I was really into graphics and art and these sorts of things. But at 13, I got my first job in a home service business. And so as I was graduating high school and that, I just really understand a way to, I had this starving artist kind of, cloud bubble vision in my head of like what my life would be if I went that direction. And so, I did what I knew how to do, which was I actually started a home service business, ran that for about 10 years. And as I was just working on my own branding, and really that was like my crash course in really understanding how to run a company. I went through all the steps that everyone does, like where we are like, okay, I got my site and my phone number, and you're like, okay, the phone's not ringing, I'm not getting customers. And then you start to think about sales, and then you realize, well, it doesn't matter what my closing rate is if I don't have any customers or leads. So then you start to learn about marketing. But eventually some people get to the point where they get to branding, and they get to this point where they look around and they realize that everybody looks and talks and walks the same it's all the same. And so if you're in the same channels, saying the same things, it's very difficult for a customer to understand why they would choose you over someone else, how to become the preferred, brand in a market. And so, as I was working on my own stuff for my home service business, and just sharing that in some of those forums back before the Facebook group days, back in the old, forum days. And, so I started to kind of do some things for people, really not as a business, but just kind of helping out. And I started to really understand that I had something special and something to offer. And it got to the point where I really needed to make a choice there. And so I did. So 2015, went into this full time and just started on my own. And we've been, building up since then. And now we have 6 full-time employees, and we've worked with hundreds and hundreds of brands across the nation and several different verticals in the home service space. And so, yeah, that's kind of the short version.
So we got the right guy at the right time in the right place here, because this is Contractor Radio. We work with a lot of home service trades guys, and most of them we found are good at kind of one of two things. They're either really good at like the installing, and it's kind of word of mouth type of thing. The experience was good, they did good work, and the customer's happy, or they're good at sales. Like they can actually sell and get business. Work product could be questionable every once in a while, but that's like their extent of the knowledge of the business. And we try to help them get the business part down. That's our job, is to help them strategically position themselves in a way that they're no longer necessarily working for the business that they created, but they get to work on it. And this brand thing is a thing that we're really passionate about. And so I want to bring the best of the best on. One of the guys I follow quite a bit, his name is Rory Vaden. He had this equation that it stuck in my head. The second he said it, I was like, and I started thinking about it. I lost sleep that night over it, because I was like, oh wow, that was pretty awesome. I like cool ideas like that. And his equation was your results times your reach equals your reputation. And then he finished it with, or your brand, right? And I went, that's pretty interesting. So my results, and he explained what it meant, and the results weren't just how many sales you made. It was like what happened when you were there, and what that experience was like, and how many people were impacted by what you did, combined with your reputation being something that is of character and value and ethics and whatever it may be for you. Your reach being this, hey, broad, like everybody knows who you are, equals what people believe you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, that is pretty cool. And so I've talked to several people on brand, and I kind of bring that up whenever I do. Does that ring true to you? Is there maybe some more insight that you would have from somebody that's doing that every day?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I would give a little bit of more clarification on the word results, though. I think for me, and I'm not sure if this is his definition of it, but I would say that I would look at that results portion of that equation, results times reach. The results is not just like I did a job and this was the result, and not even just I did a job and this is what happened, the result of all the points within that job, but it's a result of any interaction with a client. So that could be from the first time they become aware that you exist. So that could be them passing you on the street and they see your vehicle. That could be they see your ad online or offline. That could be they were talking to a friend and they heard about your brand, right? That's an interaction with your brand, even though you've not talked to them yet. You've not pitched them yet. You've not done any work for them yet. And so your brand's going to be that the sum of all of those interactions, positive or negative. You can have a negative brand image or a positive one. We all have a brand. We all have a perception of our company. That said, it may not be strong in either direction, and it also may not be what we intend it to be, regardless of the direction that is. And so, I think understanding what a brand is from the get-go is critical to actually working on your brand and doing what we call branding. And so, yeah, the brand, I would say, is basically the sum of all the interactions that a person's had with you, even if You're not in those yourself. It could be talking with, again, a referral or something like this. And so it's what they say about you when you're not around. It's the way that they think and perceive your business. And so then therefore branding, essentially, if we're working on your brand, what that is it's our opportunity to control that dialogue, control that that opinion, that perceived idea of what your company is and what you're all about and who you are. That's our opportunity to control that conversation. And if you can imagine, if I could go into any market and control the perception of what my company is to that market, and it would be what they would think what I'm saying to be absolutely true and agree with it and know it to be true, I mean, I could conquer any market, right? Absolutely. And so your brand is critical in being able to really excel to your potential. And so what we try to do is essentially do that, is to help people to get that brand lined up so that they can control that conversation and become the dominant player in their market like they should.
That's awesome. There's a lot to unpack there. I've got a billion questions now all of a sudden. So there was a bit of first impression there. You mentioned it, like they went past you on the road and they drove past your van. They saw, logo, what you do, a phone number, all those good things. And they didn't necessarily interact with you directly. They just interacted with what they saw. Mm-hmm. And then, they may call in and there's customer service. So there's some of that impression, what that is. And so that might not be the first impression, but it's the second one. And then all of them lining up as they go throughout this whole process and the full experience and interaction with you. In the end, would that be defined as your brand, like the end perception?
Yeah, well, not just the end, but at whatever point I'm at, because the very first impression I have of your company, and impression being the marketing sense and the regular sense of like I'm having an impression about who you are. But every time I come in contact with your business, at that point, I have some sort of idea of what I think. Now, if you think about a situation, you maybe had a negative experience with a company, many times at that very point, you're not going to have a good perception of that company's brand. But depending on what they do in the future, meaning, hey, manager comes in, fixes the situation, not only rectifies it, but identifies with your situation and actually leaves you feeling better than when you came in, and even potentially better than if you didn't have the negative experience. Now you're back to having a positive, impression of that company. And so, I think it's wherever you're at in that process. And the more of those positive touch points that we have, and the more on brand they are, the more that they really understand who we are, and they kind of can start to assume what's going to happen next. But the more of the positive ones we get, we build what's called brand equity. And that means that when we do have a negative point in an interaction, which hopefully doesn't happen at all, but we know it will at times. And that allows us to kind of bounce back with that customer and them to give us that leeway to rectify the situation with them and these sorts of things. So, I think, one more thing I want to mention is, the more impressions you have, the more trust you're going to build. And that's regardless of whether you've really had a meaningful interaction with that customer or not. A story that I tell people is like, if you go to a coffee shop every single day and you see the same guy there every single day, and you have a laptop, let's just say it's like $1,500 laptop, and you're sitting there working, plugging away at work. Well, one day you have to run to the bathroom. You decide, this day I'm not going to unplug it and put it in my bag and all this stuff and hang it on the rack in the stall. I'm going to ask this dude, hey, would you mind keep an eye on my computer while I run off to the bathroom, be right back? And he says, yeah, sure, whatever. Now, why would you leave that thing with that dude? Well, you don't even know his name, but you've seen him a bunch of times, right? Now that he could be a thief for all you know, but it doesn't matter because you trust him. Why? You know nothing about him. All you know is that you've seen him a bunch of times, and familiarity builds trust. And so the more impressions you have, even if you really haven't had meaningful impressions yet, the sum of them can be meaningful and can actually make you the preferred vendor in somebody's mind, even before they've really gotten too far. And then once your next more meaningful impressions actually move the needle with that client, you start to fulfill the promises that you're making in those preceding ones, that's where you can make headway really fast with people. So
that is maybe one of the best explanations I've ever heard. We came at this thing whenever we started. I was telling you before we started the actual show, kind of like how I got into it, and it wasn't anything that was intended to be what it is today. But once I decided, okay, this is a business, we're going to treat it like one. I wanted to make sure that we positioned ourselves a certain way, and I wanted to be known as elite, extremely professional, and high character in what we do. And with all of that, a bit of a sportsy feel to us because I'm a coach. Like I've always been a coach. I coach sports teams, sales teams, you name it, and the basics are all there. Teach the fundamentals, work the skills, develop the game plan, execute, and win. And so that whole vibe I wanted to capture and say, hey, this is who we are and what we're all about. Now, if you just look at my logo, you don't know that. You start to get a bit of an inkling because there's a little bit of a sportsy feel to it, but that's about it. But when you hear us talk, when you see us online, if you look into our core values, if you start to see this buildup of what we are and who we are and how we handle ourselves, we kind of look at that as what our brand is. And so we've done like the brand story exercises and all that other good fun stuff. And what are your beliefs when it comes to that? Like how does a contractor like start to go, hey, this is the brand I want to build?
Yeah. So I think it's worth mentioning, like I said before, that everybody already has a brand. And because a brand is, and the way that I would say the building blocks of a brand is your identity, your promise, and your experience. Now, everybody already has an identity. They're already making some sort of promises, whether they're on brand or not, whether they're intentional or not, right? But we're still making promises to our customers, and we already have an experience, right? So we have all the components, but it doesn't mean that they've been intentionally built. They've been intentionally created from one point, which I call a fractal brand, where we're essentially starting at one point, and we're building out from there so that everything is cohesive. And so, but everybody has a brand already. So where you go from there, I would say is a lot of times as people start looking into it, and there's a lot of different books, and everybody knows like mission statement and vision statement and core promise and all these sort of things that you've heard, and nobody really knows what to do with it all, though, is the problem. And so I've simplified things really. I like to start from a core belief and then build out from there. Go from one core belief, a lens in which we view the world. And I find this works really well for small businesses because, look, I haven't met one small business that has employees that remember every value of their company, okay? But if they can remember the core belief, the values are actually a toolbox to exercise the belief, to be the type of company and the type of people that believe X, right? And so then our value system allows us to just have sort of a tool system to say, hey, listen, this is how a company or a person would be if they believe X. And then from there, you can make a purpose statement and a vision statement and mission statement, these sorts of things to more create a plan going forward on how you're going to exercise those things. But yeah, I mean, I think it starts with a core belief is what I would say. And then from there, you can kind of build out.
So maybe we're on the right track here because we have one of the internally here at Contractor Coach Pro, we have a statement that we use all the time. Mm-hmm. If we care enough to willingly serve our client, they'll know that we love them. That's how simple it is. That's our core belief. Like, and the core values that are in there are love, serve, and care. Mm-hmm. And so everything is built around that. If it's not those things, we don't do those things. If you're not loving them, if you're not caring for them, if you're not serving them, we just don't do it. We don't focus on numbers or how many people we help or any of that kind of stuff. Just do that first. Is that kind of what you're talking about, or is that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if some people are, and this can all be confusing if somebody's not sort of, really put a lot of research into this, but your identity is broken down into a few different things: your story, belief, personality, and appearance. Your personality and your appearance, that sports comes into play, but it doesn't at all clash with your belief, right? And so you kind of build these pieces, and then they sort of build on themselves. And And so, yeah, I love, like, you have a lot of it. It sounds you really understand how this stuff works. And to give another example of how that belief can really come out, and create a lens for someone. One of my favorite examples is Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A, their belief is really about servanthood and serving others, and it's one of the only fast food restaurants, if not the only fast food restaurants, that across the board, every single one of them, you cannot go get your own drink at their restaurant. So you're originally served the drink. If you need a refill, either somebody's going to come around and ask you if you'd like your beverage refreshed, or you're going to go up to the counter, a special little corner counter they have, and ask if you can have that, and somebody comes over really quickly to do that for you. But they've manufactured an experience that you cannot do self-serve. Why? Because they're not about self-serve. They're about serving others, not self-serve. So that would go against their brand. And so it's a really simple but very clear way for us to kind of understand this. Like, if we look through our brand lens, and we look at every single touch point that we have with a client, and we anticipate every single positive and negative thing that they could go through, and we start to say, well, what would a brand like us, what would we do looking through our brand lens? And that's where you can come up with some really unique things like that, that no one else is going to do, because it wouldn't be on brand for them. They would have never even thought about it.
Yeah, that is, Chick-fil-A, you brought that one up. And I think if you say them, a few things just come up right away. They're not open on Sunday, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because of that belief, this can be fairly polarizing too, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they have conviction to the belief. Like, it is who we are. This is what we're about, regardless of the circumstances that it creates for us. We're not going to compromise that belief because we can make a buck or any of that other kind of stuff. So it's interesting, because I think it attracts a certain type of person, their ideal client, but repels another kind of person that maybe not their ideal client. Do you find that often happening in branding?
I think if you have a good brand, then that many times will happen. It's because we don't all care about the same things. But here's what happens: is you end up going a lot further by having more diehard cheerleaders. And I know people are thinking, well, dude, I have a home service business, but I mean, is chicken really that exciting too? I mean, but the point is, having people that just doesn't matter what kind of business. You could have the most boring business in life, okay? But you can still have people that really get behind you when it's not about the gadget or the gizmo or the service, right? It's not about that. That's the end thing that you end up doing. But every other person in your space does that, right? If you have an invoice, the line items on your invoice are going to be the same as the next guy and the next guy. Okay, that's what's expected when you come to a job site. But that's not why people recommend you, because that would be the same no matter what. And so people recommend you based on the things that are not written on the invoice, right? So people can get behind your brand no matter what, because it's not about the brand. It's about you identifying with them, with who they are. And when you can identify with someone else, is what you're talking about. There's certain beliefs that people can align with, but then others will say, well, that doesn't really align with me. You're going to have a more polarizing effect, but now your top 20 or 30% of people that are polarized in a positive direction are going to spread your word a lot more than the others. And also, what's good is that the bottom ones that are polarized in a negative way are going to talk about you as well. But guess what? Even though they're saying they don't agree with the things like you are, in maybe Chick-fil-A's example, they're going to be talking to people that sometimes agree with them, but then half of the other ones aren't going to agree with them, and they're actually saying good things about you to those people, right? So you end up.
That's that old saying: "There's no such thing as bad press," right?
Exactly, especially and that's I think there is bad press, but
yeah, I think when it comes to your brand,
but when it's on brand, I think that's what people mean there. Like, it's like, if it's on brand, then it can't be a bad thing, right? And that's why, for instance, when Tesla, when he broke the glass on the car, the Tesla truck, I mean, was that bad PR? Well, I mean, if you look through their brand lens, I mean, I don't really think it is. They tend to roll things out a little bit faster than normal. It's still a prototype, and so it was a way for them. Do I believe it's manufactured? I don't want to get in trouble by saying which way, but I mean, it could have certainly been, right? But I don't think it was a bad thing. And they do a lot of stuff like that. I mean, if you look at, for instance, Tesla gave out the patents and freely and said, hey, listen, whoever, GM or whoever, you guys can use our patents for our batteries from Tesla. And they said, if you guys want to use these, we are not going to come at you with any legal action. Now, people that have patents, like that's the thing, right? If you have a good idea and you can patent it, you don't want to let that patent go from if you're dead in the grave. Like you want to be holding on to that thing, right? And so for them to do the exact opposite is totally crazy, gets a ton of PR, but guess what? It's also on brand, and that's why they did it. You see, they believe,
and it actually falls in line with, like, have you ever read the book Art of War? Are you familiar with that book?
yeah.
And so Sun Tzu in that book, he says, I can tell everybody in the world my tactics. Right?
Mm-hmm.
This is how we do it. Exactly. Here you go. Here's my patent. Right. But they'll never understand the strategy behind it. And I did not know that about Tesla. That is pretty wild. I don't pay too much attention to that stuff. I'm kind of focused in my own little world over here.
Yeah.
That's super cool. So, all right, core belief, right? Get that down. That's step one, is get that understood. What do you do with that from this fractal branding aspect? Like, where do you go from there?
Yeah. So just to kind of back step one just a bit, people are probably wondering, like, they're probably thinking, well, Jim, I don't know what my core belief is, right? You know what I mean? So, so I'm just going to give you a couple of tips real quick there. And this is tough because essentially most people need a mirror to understand who they are. Okay. In order for me to understand what I look like in the morning, I need a mirror. And it's the same case many times, if not most of the time, with understanding this inside stuff. And that mirror is generally going to be two things: people that are close and understand you, and also advisors that are uniquely equipped to essentially be that mirror and seek to understand you in the context of the goals that you're trying to accomplish. And but there's a couple of things I would recommend in way of looking at this. The easiest way, and this is still going to be tough for people, just because there's not somebody, I can't be here to field questions and all that in response to the people thinking this, but there's a question that I really like to use, and it's basically, in culture today, what are good people like at their worst and at their best? And if we can try to understand, in my mind, what is wrong, basically what's wrong with the world, like if
everything,
if culture could just have this, if people could just have this, they would be at their best. Or flip it around, when people are at their worst, it's because they're missing this, right? And so, in Chick-fil-A's example, it's that people are missing service. They're selfish. They're not coming with a serving attitude. And if we could just add that back into the world, it'd make a huge difference in how we operate as a society. And so when you look through that lens, that's how I come up with, it's one of the main questions that, we go through several of them, but it's what do I believe needs to be added back in the world? And then when your company is about doing that, I mean, that's how that can drive you to get up when things are bad, and when things are good, you're going to keep pushing because you want to keep spreading that message, So that's the belief. That's how you get there. And I know that was a really kind of short way, and some people may.
We talk about that with our clients too, and we challenge, like, we'll get to this purpose or core belief thought process, right?
Yeah.
And then I'll challenge them, like, okay, so that thing you just told me, does that get you excited to get out of bed every day? Like, seriously, like, you're going to change the world. You're going to change the way things operate. You're going to change the experience for your clients, for your people, so much because you believe in that it gets you excited to get out of bed every day. And I get a lot of silent answers back, right? Mm-hmm. We go back to the drawing board. But once we get that core figured out, things start to get really easy. Do you find that too?
Yeah, I mean, I think most, especially, blue collar guys, it's you don't start business thinking like, well, how do I feel about the world and how am I going to
How
change
do I
the
feel
world?
about anything, right?
And, and you're like, dude, I'm just trying to make money. I'm trying to go to work. I'm trying to feed my kids. I got some other employees. I'll need to make sure their kids are, fed and all this. But here's the thing is that if you don't have that, when things get rough, you're going to pack it up. Because if it's just about money, okay, then what I'm going to do is when things, okay, if you take, for instance, stocks, if your stock is going up and then it starts to go down at some point, things went up a lot and they kind of came back down a little bit. It might be a good time to get out of that and look for a different vehicle, right? And that's what happens in business. If you have nothing else attached to it than money, you're going to say, well, we had a good ride, but it's starting to go down and therefore I'm out. Or again, same type of thing with investments, with stocks. You go really high and it may not even start going down, but because things are really high, you say, you know what? I can kind of sit back. I can kick back. I don't have to push forward. I don't have to look at other options here. I don't have to pay attention to this because everything's good. And so you don't push on. And guess what? Things aren't so good when you start to take your eye off the ball, right? And so I think I think people need to realize that most of us do have those things, even if we haven't clarified and defined them yet. Otherwise, we just pack it up every time things got hard. Okay. And if you're saying, well, I wouldn't do that because X, like you're already thinking about your beliefs, right? You're already thinking about your actual kind of belief and system. So why not just define and clarify those things so that we can actually double down on them and use them to their full extent instead of just being this background thing that we only sort of lean on when it's absolutely necessary? Why not double down, be more of you so that you can take full advantage? Entrepreneurship is, if there's one word in entrepreneurship that is more critical than anything else, to me, it's leverage, right? And why just say, well, I have a thing that, we'll lean on it when we'll use it on a rainy day. Fully leverage everything you have, and you'll get the best result you can from that.
So you brought up something that I want to talk about. You kind of were, I don't know, dancing around it a little bit, but I think I know what you're talking about. I want to ask you for some clarity. I gotta pay the bills here for just a second, if you don't mind. We're gonna hear a little word from Atlas, and we'll come right back. Is that okay with you, Ryan?
You got it.
All right, awesome.
When you're looking for shingles, you need to look for that Scotchgard brand that Atlas has on the shingles to know that you're getting protection against those black streaks caused by algae.
I think the Scotchgard is an important part of it.
And they're literally putting their science into the product.
It eliminates all streaking on the roofs.
Everyone knows Scotchgard.
So it gives it some legitimacy. When we go into a home to sell a roof, and the Scotchgard branding's on our samples or on our literature, I mean, it is recognized.
Homeowners can't tell you what kind of brand of shingle that they have, but they can tell you that it has Scotchgard.
Husbands, but most importantly, wives. The women know Scotchgard. You go into that house and you say, you're gonna have a clean roof, it's backed by Scotchgard. Wow.
Everything comes with Scotchgard. Our new couch came with Scotchgard. Our new chair came with Scotchgard.
Hey, you got Scotchgard on your furniture. Now we got it on shingles for you. No more black algae.
It's just that brand recognition, so the client just feels really comfortable. It definitely builds credibility as well.
When we present an Atlas shingle to a customer and we tell them that this has a Scotchgard warranty backed by 3M, the trust is there.
We feel more confident that they feel confident in us that we're giving them a product that's going to last for the life of the roof.
You're not only selling the color, then you're selling the long-lasting color, and it lasts for a lifetime.
Sold. Done deal.
If I can put on all Atlas products and avoid any type of streaking and drive by that roof 10 years from now, and it looks like the day we put it on, that's what I'm looking for. That's the peace of mind I want to give my customers. It's just an easy sell.
So I knew about that commercial. It was big on the whole brand, right? Scotchgard brand and stuff like that. And I thought, boy, what a great time. So did you notice anything like they weren't even talking about Atlas or the actual company? It's like the component that was in it that everybody else knew.
Boy, I hope 3M gave them some money for that thing.
No, 3M is all good with it. Like they are licensed.
Something tells me there was a co-op deal there.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, dude, 3M is, they've done an amazing job. They have tape, they have coatings, protections. They have vinyl, and like people just, I mean, they're really known for that durability. And it's, we do a lot with wraps. Yeah, we do a lot with, vehicle wraps. And I mean, I don't want to bash other brands, but like there's other brands, and like people are like, I want the 3M, I want, we don't do the actual wrapping, but we deal with a lot of wrap companies because we do design. But yeah, I mean, it's a great company. And I would say, like you said, the 3M really got the brand coverage there more, didn't they?
Yeah, they got that part figured out. So you were touching on something. It wasn't something I was planning on even talking about today, but we were talking about this core belief. And you hear all the time nowadays that the younger generations aren't as hungry as we were. They don't have the drive, right? And you're actually talking about those things, passion. Like we term those things as something different nowadays, I think. Passion, purpose, our why. You hear that kind of thing all the time. But if you're not like feeling driven to go do something every day, I don't think you're following what your purpose is or that core belief. Is that kind of what you were touching at?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really complex thing. We're not going to break it all down here. There's a book called Unscripted. He talks about an FU moment, or a F, not FU, FTE, F this event, where you go from this and you're like, I'm done, like I'm sick and tired, like I'm gonna make a change. And many times we have to hit a particular type, we have to hit some type of rock bottom, even if it's a relative rock bottom, right? It's not the same for everybody. But in order to sort of really have the resolve to then, push forward. So it's a really complex thing, because part of getting on the right path, I think for many of us, is actually kind of falling off path. And then, but yeah, I think once it's all about, like, basically, I think we have this inherent thing inside of us where we know, it's like more of like a compass. We know when we're kind of going the wrong direction. And I always tell people, like, people get scared about, like, oh man, well, now I'm understanding this stuff. And like, I think I think we need to, get this stuff in place with the fundamentals. I think we might need to change our name. We might need to change it. This is a lot. And they're like, they get scared because it might be a lot of work. And I always tell people there's never a wrong time. There's never a wrong time to go in the right direction, right? Because if you keep going in the wrong direction, you're going to have to it's even more steps back to get back on path. So you may as well start changing things when you understand what that is. And part of understanding is, unfortunately, and at least in my life, part of understanding is doing the wrong things sometimes, to understand what doesn't work and what, understand more about yourself. And but yeah, so I mean, I think whatever you as you go through the different exercises, it could be with our company, and we do offer strategy sessions outside of just like the full branding things. But if you work with someone who understands this stuff, they can be that good mirror for you to help you to understand exactly who you are and bring clarity and definition around what's important to you, and also what differentiates you in the market. Nowadays, everybody does the same stuff. The end thing is the same. So it's really about, how and why we do those things, right? You talked about this, the book Start With Why, and he talks about that as well. And what we try to do is kind of bring a little bit more structure and information and clarity around this stuff, because people read that book, like Start With Why by Simon Sinek, which is an amazing book, but they leave that and say, I know my why, it's my family. Well, your family's a who, okay? It's not a why, and if it was your family, then your job would be interchangeable, right? And and you wouldn't have to do your company anymore. And people look for easy answers most of the time, and so that's where again, having a team, your key team members or some other people to help you to keep pushing for deeper questions, not settling for easy questions and easy answers, that can really help you get to good places, because it's not if like that, you probably don't know. Like you really have to kind of wrestle with this stuff a bit.
Yeah, it's actually one of our challenges. One of the most frustrating things I think we deal with is I don't think people want to think. Not as much as they need to, not as much as they should. They would rather have a silver bullet, give me the answers, I'll just go do it. But I cannot give you drive. I cannot give you purpose. I can't tell you what your why is. You're the only person that can, how I can help you get there, right? That's our job. We walk through that and we listen, we're observant, and we understand. We're going to have a little bit of empathy as well. And we don't want to make you feel dumb. So we have to walk you down the path so that you come to the understanding on your own. But once it's like magic. It is. It's like magic once you figure it out. I'll never forget this guy. His whole business was, hey, we're going to do this thing. We're going to make all this money. We're going to be $100 million, blah, blah, blah. Right. And I'm like, why? And he's like, well, because I want to achieve this thing. I like the achievement and all that. And then he starts telling me this story about his kid, his nephew. And his nephew's in the hospital. He's been diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he's trying to help this kid go through this. And it's really heart-wrenching and difficult for him to deal with. And he goes to the doctor and he says, hey, doc, what's going to make this kid's last few months tolerable? And he said, well, sometimes the family will bring in a pet, right? They'll bring in the pet and that'll at least help them have some joy as they go through this. And he's like, the kid doesn't have a pet. Can I get one for him? He's like, yeah. So he goes out and gets a golden retriever, brings it back, and the kid is just in tears, happy, joyful. Man, you want to talk about a change in a person? He knew what he needed to do. He needed to go help other kids that were dealing with terminal cancer and other families. That's what his whole business is built around now. Like all of that is to serve these people in a way that nobody was noticing before. Yeah. And his business has skyrocketed because of it without really being focused on, hey, how do I make my business bigger? It's been pretty wild to watch some of these things go. And he's got the whole golden fund and everything's like all part of it now. It's all part of his belief. And they got a big golden retriever on their vehicles and all this stuff that's all about that, which is really cool. And I don't know if he hit the nail on the head real well, but I know that it drives them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
that's really cool.
So let's assume we figure that out, right? Let's assume that we can get to that. And there's all kinds of exercises. You don't need me and you don't really need Ryan. There's all kinds you can hop on YouTube and start getting some of the exercises for that. But once we get to that and we're going to take that, we're going to do something with it. What are some of the first things that these contractors need to be thinking about? Because you said Fractal Brand. I don't even know what that means. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah. Well, a fractal is, it's a a geometric mathematical thing where it's like the next component mirrors the last one, right? And so, like, for instance, a snowflake is a fractal, a tree is a fractal. So we have the trunk and then the branches, but if you look closer at an individual branch, it kind of looks like a mini tree. And then you look in on a stem of that and it looks like another mini tree, and you kind of just keep going down. Even on a leaf itself, it actually mirrors a tree, right? And so, it's basically self-replicating, and so it becomes very easy to build a self-replicating brand. Everybody, I think most people understand that they should have a cohesive brand, but it's a lot more difficult in practice. And I think the reason for that is not because we don't understand the concept or the benefits of a cohesive brand. It's because we don't have one starting place to go from, right? And a little off subject, but on subject is, even within content, and, because I know you're obviously into content, creating some content right now. But most big idea people, big content people, they have one piece of content that ends up, it gets broken down into more components, right? So you have a book, and every talk, every video, it's all leading in the same thing. And that's how most things of that magnitude are built. I mean, even if you look at the Bible, there's one idea and every story points to one idea. And so, that's what a fractal is. And we can have that in our business by figuring out that core thing. And this is why I get it down to a core belief. You don't hear most people you hear talk about values, a purpose, mission, vision, and you have like sort of this whole tool set, right? And it becomes very complicated for people. But if I could just get you to get one thing right, and then stem from there, you could actually operate without some of that stuff, never even thinking about it, but you'd still be probably doing it. And so it kind of simplifies the process where I say, hey, start from one point and let's branch out from there, just like a tree, and branch out from there, and everything's going to be part of the whole.
It's funny that you say that, because we don't do the traditional mission, right? Like you got, hey, this is my core belief. I'm going to go get this mission statement and all that other good. Our missions are more like military, right? Like, hey, we're going to go do this year, and these are the things we're going to do, and exactly how we're going to do them. They're very laid out, all wrapped around that core belief, right? Like, hey, that's all because of that. So that's pretty cool to hear you say that, because I believe in the same thing. I don't think you need all of that other stuff, right? So we find our core belief when we say this is our thing, and then from that thing, everything we do from there is building off of it and mirroring it, replicating it, if I understand things correctly. From a practical standpoint, what would that look like?
Yeah, so your identity is going to be made of your story, which, like you talked about, you had like kind of the coach deal and all that, right? Your belief, your personality, and your appearance, and the appearance from, we're not talking about your exact visual brand, like your logo and these, like, we're talking about like, your brand might be, sports theme, clean, maybe a little, edgy at time, that sort of thing, where it's really sort of like these broad strokes. But if you think about a person, it's gonna be similar to like a brand. Like if I'm talking about an actual person, if I know their story, their beliefs, their personality, and I have an idea of what they appear to be like, I'm not only can I kind of pick them out in a crowd, but I can kind of tell you what they do in any situation, right? And what that does, it means as a consumer, if we now look at the brand side, a consumer can pick you out in a crowd, and they can pretty much know how you're going to act, or how they would expect you to act in any given situation, positive or negative. So you can start to build trust by simply following what they would expect you to do. And you're not doing it because they expect you to, you're doing it because that's who you are, and they're expecting you to do that because that's who you are. So it's just all kind of comes together. But so basically, I would say you're going to start to build out some of those other components, like understanding kind of the origin and story of the company. What do you guys like? The personality, what kind of, how do you want to appear? And then that's where you can start to build out your visual branding and exact sort of voice things with like, how, how's our, copy on our website going to be, and what is our one-liners going to be? And, these sorts of things, you can kind of get into the details at that point. And start building it out. So once you have the foundation, that's where you're going to build from, just like a house,
Yeah. And I catch myself on some of these things, because we have a variety of brands. We've got our Contractor Coach Pro brand, we've got this Contractor Radio, we've got Top Rep, and all of them have kind of their own separate feel. But if I go back to my core belief, that stuff is still underlying in each one of those, and you can see it in each one of those without it being necessarily the visual representation of the logo itself, right? Mm-hmm. That's super cool. So are you a believer in like the book Brand Story and stuff like that? Is that a good roadmap for people to follow to kind of get their story put together? Or
Story Brand by Donald Miller?
Yeah.
It's I think that's probably definitely in my top 20, maybe even higher. But Story Brand is not going to help you to fully build like the actual brand. It's really more about I think kind of understanding how to communicate as a whole to people, and that the whole of our communication should be sort of a put together the same way a story in a movie would. But I think that when you can combine that sort of thing with your unique brand, so, hey, I understand how to generally tell a story, like I'm the guide, and I'm going to guide our customer, the hero, through this process. Here's the bad thing you're going to deal with. Here's how we're going to help you get through it, and here's how you can get started, and really simplifying communication. When you can combine that with your unique brand, I think you can get some really special results. And most people can do it. The thing is that nowadays, like, most people just aren't clear at all. So, I mean, so if you can just be simple and clear, you've won half the battle. But if you can then become unique as well, now you become untouchable, right? Because like you talked about with Art of War, the reason why I can tell somebody my strategy and they can't replicate is because I would be actually throwing them off by telling them my strategy, because they'll try to copy me, although they have their own strategies in place. And I'm doubling down on one thing. And if they attempt to double down on more than one thing, they're going to fail. And so what happens is they either fail at my thing, or they fail at their thing, or they fail at both. Either way, I'm going to win, because I'm going to be winning at my one thing. And so if you can just, if you can have that clarity, and then you can double down on, we say it all the time, it's just be more of you, right? If you can just double down on the things that make you, that's your unique, makes you unique. And if you can double down on that stuff, nobody else is going to double down on it, because that's not them. So double down on your stuff, your unique things, and you can get some massive results with that no one else can.
I feel like the universe is talking to me. This is not the first of these that double down on being you and just do your one thing. You actually kind of put it in the book format too. Is like, Ryan, have you been paying attention to the conversation I'm having over here with somebody else completely? Yeah, I'm getting advice like that from really great people that really understand brand, really understand marketing, really understand creating a following that is a community that's invested in you, aligned with you. That's amazing. I wasn't expecting to get there today. So I want to say thank you for that. You gave me a bit of clarity on some of my own stuff today. So I'm a contractor. I want to get clear, and I struggle with that. I already know I struggle with it. You've probably had these in some of your strategy sessions with people. Like, I'm not creative. I don't think like that. Can you just think like that? What are some of the tips to get people through that? Is there anything you got there?
Yeah, it's really, and this is why it really is helpful to have somebody help you with it. And I can certainly do it, but there's others that, if you're listening, you may be in Jim's, program as well. And, if you have some advisement, it can be very helpful. And the reason why is because, like you said, like a lot of times we kind of try to sidestep hard questions. All right. And it's really, if you want to get to the good answers, you got to ask hard questions. You got to be willing to really not settle for easy answers, but keep on it until you get the right answers. And that's all you're doing, right? You're saying, well, listen, I don't, most people say, well, what makes you different? What do you care? Well, we want to help our customers. We want to do a great job. We want to be the best. We use the best equipment. We have the best guys, best training, best stuff, best. And, it's really the same thing as everyone else. And the thing is that I could like literally say this, and then if we were to be able to like bring a caller in right now that was like listening, you say, well, what makes you different? They'd say that exact same thing many times. And you'd be like, but dude, like I just said, like everybody says that. And they're, well, but in my market, da, da, da. And it's like,
no, but I really do it. That's what right. No, but I really do it.
Yeah, but we really do it. Yeah. And so you have to be willing to say like basically just set that all aside and be like, all right, what if there was actually a better reason, a better answer here? Am I willing to keep pushing here and keep digging? And if you set that kind of your beliefs right now on about, who you are and what makes you different, kind of set that stuff aside, kind of be willing to dig further. Ask what, there's I don't remember who came up with this, but you've probably heard of it because I know you're do a lot of reading, but it's the 5 whys. Like first you ask why once, but then you ask why again. I talked to a pest control guy yesterday, and he's like, well, if we go out and do trying to get rid of ants, I mean, yeah, we can go there and just kill the ants. But he's like, the thing is that why are the ants there? So if we just kill the ants, they're probably going to come back. So we need to ask, why are they there? And why is X happening? You keep going back until you really truly understand, the fullness of what the situation is. And now you can come up with some really great things to help people. And so that's the same with your brand. Like, I think most people just haven't dug far enough. And they come up with these kind of superficial answers, and they just stick with them like it's the best they can do. And it's just not. Every single person is unique. Every single person has some really special things that they bring to the table and bring to their market. And if you're not willing to dig for those, like, you're really doing yourself and the entire market and people that you serve, you're doing them a disservice. And so if you're really kind of at that superficial level and you feel like you're just the same as everybody else, I can guarantee you are not. You just haven't dug far enough yet.
Boy, that's strong advice right there, Ryan. It's people want easy answers, and they're attracted to them. They're like lightning. What's the easiest path to get from A to Z? And that's where I'm going to go. And it's really the hardest path. They don't understand it. They've created things. So if they would take the time to just think a little bit up front, be proactive, really get in touch with and to say to a bunch of contractors, get in touch with yourself and figure out, they're like, whoa, dude, I don't want to listen to you anymore. That is a hard thing for some of them to hear and understand. But I think it's where we're headed. I think I think we're coming to grips with it a little bit more, and people are being more open to that idea. Ryan, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you in Prolific Brand Design, what would they do? How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can go to getprolific.com, GET, the word prolific.com, and that's our website. There's you can grab a free ebook on there, kind of walk you through a checklist of how to put together your brand, from the fundamentals to the visuals. We have a bunch of examples of stuff we've done on there, and
which I looked at rock solid, man. I was like, wow, these guys do really good. And that was just like my first impression, right? I had this impression, and talking about brand, the way you got here, Jim told me about you and said, hey, you need to talk. And so boom, impression number one, like, hey, he believes in him, so he must be halfway decent, because I have respect for Jim. And so then I go and look up your website before I reached out to you, and sure enough, really great work. Then I reached out to you through Messenger, and we had our first interaction, and you were on brand, right? You instantly exactly what I was kind of expecting whenever I went to it. And now here today, we're having this interaction. I'm like, yep, exactly what I like. A different level. It was a different level of understanding branding and the thought and time you put in. I want to appreciate you for that. Really great job. So I have one more question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What's your core belief?
My core belief is that we have basically that people have a much larger potential and potential impact, and that most of us either have kind of lost sight of that, or we don't have the tools and the knowledge to get there. So basically, I try to fill that. My job is to essentially try to equip with both knowledge and strategy and understanding, and also inspiration, like helping people to move to those higher goals. And just when I was growing up, adults told me, like, hey, you can't go pro doing that. You can't do this. And I get out of high school, and it's like, I know this dude that's pro. I knew this dude. I know several people that went pro in athletics, and I'm like, why did people act like you can't do this? And yes, it's not, out of 100, it's probably, 1 out of 100, right? But probably even less. But the point being is that it's possible, and people act like because something is improbable that it's not possible. And I think that when we really apply ourselves, probabilities can be drastically altered. And so that's really what I'm about. I read my kid "Oh, the Places You'll Go" every single night. He's 1 year old. My older daughter, just trying to teach those in a more meaningful way even, but really like helping people to kind of expand their thought process, and then giving them the tools and guidance to get there. I want to throw out one thing that might help to frame this for people a little bit better. If you get into the end of this and you're like, dude, I don't, you're just kind of like, I can't do this whole thinking about myself thing. And like, I'm just trying to make money. Look, we get some dramatic results for people. I've seen guys that put our stuff into place and within months they've doubled revenue. So listen, the money side is there if that's what you think it's all about right now. But I'm telling you, if you build a house on sand, if you build a crappy foundation, that thing's going to crumble. And the reason why it financially makes sense is because we're talking about real solid foundations here, right? And so I just want to stress that this is one of the biggest levers. I talked about leverage being the biggest thing for any entrepreneur in any situation. This is a huge leverage point for people. And so I don't want them to miss that if they're just not quite getting this yet, that it makes financial sense. The lever is big and it has a lot of leverage, but it's because we're really talking about doing things different in the right way, in my opinion. But it could be, that different thing could be like, well, maybe it's a little too different for me. I wouldn't disregard it because your competitors might not. So.
Yeah, that I agree with you. You have certain leverage points as an entrepreneur, especially in this home service world, and that idea of really knowing what you're all about and why you're doing what you're doing is, I think, the biggest one. I think it's the one that you're everything else, every other lever you pull is based off of that. This cool sales system that I'm going to create, this proprietary and different from everybody else, is because of those beliefs that you have, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a great point about why it's so important to invest your time into it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, I use this concept all the time as something that I'm a big believer in. Every decision you make has a return on investment. And so when you decide not to figure this out, your return on investment is very low. But when you decide, hey, I'm going to take the time, I'm going to spend the effort, I'm going to get the coaching, whatever it is you got to do to get there, that return on investment is off the charts. I mean, we do the same thing with our clients. Like, hey, get this thing done, get it in place. Let's do the work, get it where it's supposed to be. And we're doubling, tripling, quadrupling revenues that they were all focused there whenever they focused somewhere else and really focused on what was important. Money's a byproduct. It's simply, it's just
exactly
of the purpose. Oh man, this is good. I want to keep talking to you forever, Ryan, but hey, I know time is valuable. We're here on a Friday afternoon too. So where are you located anyway?
I live in Arizona.
Okay. So it's still a little early for you at least. I don't know.
Yeah.
You're no time zone thing, right?
Been here for 2 years. We moved from the warm Illinois area.
I got a lot of clients in Illinois.
No, I was done with those, with those negative 20 degrees. So we moved out here, kind of complete opposite. But yeah,
I lived in Wisconsin for 18 years. I went, no more of that. I could not do this.
Yeah.
So getprolific.com, right?
Yeah.
Reach out to Ryan, reach out to his team. Sounds like a great group of guys to get to some of that core belief and probably do some amazing branding for your business. Ryan, thanks a lot for being here today, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim.
It was awesome. All right, guys, that was Ryan Kettering from Prolific Brand. Man, that was awesome. One of the best podcasts. Like, I'm going to bring on people I don't know more often because that was fantastic. The things I would take away from that, if you haven't figured out why you're doing what you're doing, you got to get it down, and it can't just be the first little peeling of onion. Peel it back until you truly get to that thing that just, good God, I cannot sleep until I get this done. When you bring that thing that everybody wants back into the world and into the equation that may have been being set aside, it gets noticed. It becomes memorable. And people talk about it like they talk about Chick-fil-A and their service and 3M and their elite products. And so think about those things as you hear this today. Thanks for being on and listening to our show. We hope that we helped you do something today that helps you get control of your business so you can grow your business and find that personal financial freedom that you're chasing. It is why we do what we do. We want to help you get to where you want to be. We want to help you gain that belief in what you're doing. That's actually our purpose, is to empower people to believe. And we do that through helping you fight through those barriers and figure that out for yourself so that everything else is leveraged off of that belief. Thanks for being here today. We will see you next time around on Contractor Radio, and go out there and get after it, fellas. Is what we need to do to serve the others out there on the planet. Talk to you later.